So in level 2 of our interspiritual mindfulness teacher training program, in this week we then move from the personal to the spiritual, and I'm constantly replacing the word spiritual with the word interspiritual to signify that this domain belongs to everybody and can be accessed by anybody, no matter what your beliefs, even if they're secular, it doesn't matter. So in this week we begin to look at our three main practices, one for the thinking mind, the loving kindness, and the body-based practices, and how they would change then, and how the language will change when we introduce an interspiritual element to the course. And what does that mean? So in our inner process, we then move from the ego to the observer. We develop that in our mindfulness practice. And then what we're looking for, I suppose, in an interspiritual sense, is to connect to that more authentic self. And that authentic self, is synonymous with oneness, and whatever word you use for oneness. So that's the inner spiritual journey that everybody takes on some level or other. So not only do we move away from the smallness, if you like, of our story and our attachment to our ego self into the observer, but then we allow that observer to connect to something bigger. And that something bigger, Eckhart Tolle will call that the authentic self. The most generic term is oneness, and then various traditions have their own language for that. So then, we'll be looking at how that affects our three main practices, and what does that do for mindfulness? How do I move from personal development into the bridge into the spirituality or interspiritual context? What language do I use, and what sort of outcomes can I expect from the practices? Within the week as well, we'll be continuing our walking meditation practice, but with adding again those spiritual elements to it, or sometimes referred to as spiritual intelligence. So all these things will be defined within the week, and we get a chance to try them out. Again, looking at language, looking at terms and expressions that we can use, and what they might actually mean. So this is a week on interspirituality within our practice. Again, we'll be using the MBI TAC to assess our practice and our teaching. And also we'll be continuing the QQI module on teacher training. So in this particular week, we'll be introduced to various teaching skills or training skills that we get to try out with groups, so that we have a range of skills we can use when we're facilitating a group. So all of that will take place in the interspiritual week. We'll also maybe have a little bit of a look at people's images of the transcendent, of oneness, as I've explained. Obviously everyone has their own term for that, part of the assessment will be maybe looking at your own spiritual identity, and maybe writing an autobiography at that. So really it is a very powerful week, very interesting too, to explore the whole interspiritual domain and what that might mean, and what your own spiritual journey has been that has brought you to this moment in time. So thank you.